Are you struggling to make money with your website? Well, in this episode, we talked to Mike Beatty, whose niche site earned $180,000 last year, and he shares what life changes that he had to make that led to that success. We chat about how many websites generated this revenue, his focus on SEO and site structure, particularly for the best chances of success, and how he learned how to monetize the blog effectively, and most importantly, how he utilizes link building and outreach to gain very high quality backlinks. This is a good listen, so don't miss out on these valuable insights that Mike shares. Enjoy. And if you want help to build your side hustle to over $100,000 in revenue, be sure to go check out oneblogaway.co. That's oneblogaway.co. There I have a free course that you can check out and have the opportunity to work with me one-on-one. Now let's get into the video. And welcome back to the Blog Revolution. My name is Chris, and we have the privilege of speaking with Mike Beatty from MakeTimeOnline.com. Mike, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, no problem, man. A lot of people may not know this, but we kind of go way back, and I remember coming across you a long time ago with your podcast and just listening to you all the time. And then we were able to chat a few times, and it was really, interesting because I found someone I can kind of grow up with, in this space, which was really awesome. So I appreciate you just giving me the time of day at the time because I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, to be honest, I thought you knew everything when I spoke to you. I had no idea what I was doing. So it's like the blind leading the blind, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let's rewind a little bit, if you don't mind, Mike, and give people a little bit of a background as to how you got into the, affiliate website space, SEO, and all of that fun stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So it was probably about 2017. I actually remember we were sat down in my parents' living room with my wife. No kids at the time, and we were just like, we were doing loads of stuff because we were international teachers. So we'd been 2015, we moved abroad. We moved to Qatar from the UK originally, and we were just back in the summer holiday, and we were just like chatting about some of the stuff that we're doing. Like we traveled to something like 20, 25 countries in the space of 2 years that we'd moved away, and we were saving money for the first time. I was like reading a ton of books. I was learning about businesses and things like that. I was just super excited about all this potential in the world that I'd never seen before. Because when you're just stuck in the grind, and particularly in London, it's busy, it's rainy, it's cold, you just full on all the time, and it's just to get by. So we were just super excited about all this stuff that we've been doing and learning and things like that. And I just sat down in my parents' living room and just said, "Hey, Sarah, should we start a blog?" I had no idea what a blog was at this time, to be totally honest. It was more like as in, I just wanted to write down some things that I was learning so we could look back on it in the future, rather than just Facebook or Instagram where it's just hard to find stuff in the past on Facebook unless it comes up on memories and things like that. And who sits there on Instagram and scrolls back like 5 years ago or 10, 20 years ago? So I was thinking like it would be a place where it will just be there forever. And we just got hooked up on like a WordPress.com, like a free website. And we just wrote one thing per week. Didn't really even tell anyone about it, just more for ourselves. And then slowly through that year, started figuring out, people make money from blogs. I was like, how do they do this? And then, started reading income reports. I think it was like Michelle Schroeder Gardner and Pat Flynn and people like that, some of the OGs in the space where like they're sharing their income reports. I was like, people are not only making money, people are making like insane money from this. I was like,
yeah.
So it just went down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out how they do it. Ended up doing Wealthy Affiliate, which I think is how I stumbled across you like years ago. So that would have been maybe 2018 when I first took that course and things. And and then I guess the rest is history.
Yeah. Man, I remember that time. I started in 2015, but didn't take it seriously until like 2017 or so. Yeah. And then from then, I had a couple of sites do really well and was starting making some decent money with it. And, it worked out well, but I still was just throwing stuff at the wall at that point, and some things were working, but a lot of stuff wasn't. Yeah, but I learned a lot from it. But it's good to see, like someone who kind of came from the same background as me is like kind of doing so well with it right now. What do you think was the the factor that made you like, you know what, I need to do something other than what I was doing, and that's what made you start looking for another option to make income?
Um, yeah, well, I mean, like the free website, there was no intention of monetizing it. I didn't even know it was possible to monetize a blog at that stage. So then it was then as I was learning about other stuff, I was like, I quite enjoy this. Like, I've never at school I hated English, I hated writing, but the more I was like reading and learning, the more I realized how words are so important, and being able to write and do marketing of some sort is going to be important no matter what business you get into. And at the time, I had
Yeah.
no idea what business I wanted to get into. So yeah, that was more the thing, more the case is that I was like, I just want to learn marketing. I wasn't really like I want to make tons of money from my first website. I came on the mindset of like, I just want to learn. I just want to, however I can, whatever course I can afford or whatever people's brains I can pick. Um, you know, that's how I just wanted to learn. So I think I actually started um, it was through Pinterest. Pinterest marketing was what really, it was like my first little bit of success, where back before, I think it was in 2018 or 2019, where it became like an actual legit company, and it just started becoming like pay to play. Whereas
Hmm.
before that, you could just get so much free traffic almost in any space. And so I had one on like yoga and keto, and I was just trying to pick up, I was just copying anything I saw that was on Pinterest and working well, and just kind of reverse engineering what other people were doing. And so, start getting like a few viral pins, and some of them could go crazy, like an individual pin, you could end up getting 30, 50,000 clicks, in a few days almost. Like it was like crazy how quick it would happen. So I had all these plans of like, oh, I could create a course and sell this and do all that sort of stuff. And then it just changed almost overnight. And the
Yeah.
amount of traffic you could get was just completely wiped out. And so, yeah, that was the stage where I was like, right, I need to learn something else. And so that's when I kind of started doing more SEO. And that's where Make Time Online, because I was always doing Make Time Online. I was having chats with people on the podcast, but I wasn't really doing any, wasn't really trying to, again, I wasn't really trying to monetize it or anything like that. It was just more, I wanted to, as I was saying to you before we hit record, like, I just wanted to pick people's brains for free. Like, it was
Yeah.
completely selfish while I was doing the podcast. But then I was like, I could probably do some SEO and like do some, get some traffic in the space by writing different articles. And so I just ended up doing that and like going crazy with what I was doing with that. And I just realized like when the first time you get like some traffic from Google and it comes to your website, and then it comes again the next month and the next month and the next month, and you can see the consistency. It's a crazy feeling the first time you do it, and so it just becomes addictive. And then it's like, right, how can I monetize this now, and what can I do with it? Um, yeah, and then that kind of led me down the path of learning loads about SEO and all that side of things. And then, yeah, and then I've got one main other website now that I kind of focus on more than Make Time Online or any of the other little side projects that I had on the go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That focus is big. Focus is tough, especially when you're, a lot of people who might be listening to this already have, a day job, a 9 to 5, and you're trying to fit building a niche site inside that time frame that you have, any extra time that you have, and that's tough to do, right? And even with you said you noticed that with doing the podcast and the Make Time Online, that you were kind of getting, we were talking about it before, you kind of getting shiny object all the time, and you weren't really focusing on what you were mainly talking about, right? So you started focusing on it more, and it actually had some good wins, which is really awesome. So since you bring up, the niche site that you were talking about, if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of where the site is now, and then we'll try to reverse engineer it from there.
Cool, yeah. So yeah, I've been running a sport-based website since, I think it only published, it went live in like January the 1st, 2021. So I was kind of working on it for a few months before that. But because I already had a bit of knowledge this time, I was like, right, I want to make sure I set it up right from the start, and I had a real plan of where I wanted it to go. So last year it made about 180k in revenue, and I probably spent about 50k because I've been trying to build a team. It could have been
Hmm.
on much more of a shoestring budget, but it just kind of, I was just growing it as it was growing, sort of thing. So it was always made sure there was enough profit in there, and that's kind of where the situation is at now. It has been hit in December, like in a bit of a Google update. I think I've got a few ideas as to why, and it's definitely started to, it's coming back up a little bit now. So, um, but it's still making a decent amount of money each month.
Yeah, no, that is, first of all, congratulations, Mike. That is awesome. That's not easy to do, and you were able to figure it out and get there. So, man, 180 or so thousand last year, you said, to me, in 2021.
Yeah, 2022. Yeah,
2022, sorry. Yeah, man,
yeah,
that's still pretty good. So the blog is about what, just over 2 years old, 2.5 years old?
yeah. So it's just two. Yeah, I mean that was considering like that. It got to that stage, by the end of year one. I think in like month, I can't remember exactly, but month 12 or 13, it was making like 5 figures a month, and I just
Nice.
blew my mind at like the potential, and it was like, how is this even possible? Um, but yeah, no, it's been crazy seeing like the growth, and it's like, oh, this is what everyone keeps talking about all this time, and all these chats that I've been having. This is what other people have been experiencing, and again, it was like very strategically put together. It was like I had real articles where I was like, "This is how I was going to make money, and this is why I'm producing these articles." And it's just like nothing else. It's just it's aiming for quality over quantity all the time, basically. Which
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
complete opposite of what I was doing before.
yeah, exactly. Let me ask you, do you think that is, okay, what do you think is the biggest contributing factor to having that kind of growth within a 12 or so month period?
um, I think there's a lot of luck. There's always luck that goes into anyone with a business that's done well in quite a short amount of time. There's always luck that goes into it. There's the timing. There's real world situations that might be going. There's kind of coming off the back of COVID and things like that. So there's those sort of things that come into play. There's also maybe like just slightly untapped at that stage, whereas it's getting more and more competitive, and every space is getting more and more competitive. It's important to be aware of that, but it doesn't mean that there's still not the opportunity in pretty much tons and tons of different spaces. It's just trying to find your angle and your voice. But yeah, no, I think just focusing on, rather than trying to, I don't have a content schedule. Basically, all of the advice that a lot of people will suggest, which is not bad advice to someone that's starting. I would say that though, it's good to try and build the habits and the consistency and things like that. And when you're starting, you just have no idea what you're doing, and so you can just do nothing for a long period of time. So it's important to try and keep that consistency at the start. But once you kind of know what's going on, then it's just more about just trying to map out what you want to do, and then just trying to get there. And it's not a race to get there. It's just, can you do it as well as possible? And I've been trying to build a team around me as well. So rather than, hiring 5 writers at once, which could have been possible, it's just hire one really good writer who might cost 5 times as much as what like other people
Yeah.
might. But it's more with like the long-term vision in mind, sort of thing, and trying to build like a long-term sustainable business rather than just something that ranks and then tanks a few months later.
Yeah. Now, you said that focus was a big deal for you, right? Because you had a lot of other things going on, and I know a lot of people can relate. I for sure, with so many distractions in the world, and especially with blogging, there's so much busy work, right, that we can do that actually gets nothing done, and
Yeah.
we feel like we did something, but then we're looking back at our sites, 6 months later, and we're like, how come we're not getting any traffic? What did you do to kind of help refocus yourself to make sure that you can continue with the growth that you've experienced?
Yeah, so there's a part of the story which I didn't mention as well, is that again, before we had kids, so it would have been 2019, I took a year off work, and that was only possible because my wife was going to work and things like that. And we, like I say, I didn't have kids. what I didn't realize is how much different life is once you've had kids. And I know you obviously
Oh
started
gosh.
all of your stuff with Benji. Is it
Yeah,
Benji?
Benji.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I know that you would have had a totally different experience, and hats off to you and anyone that does it when you have particularly young kids. It's just like, I don't really know if I would have been able to do this like with a full-time job and young kids. That definitely changes things. But I kind of realized I had a little bit of a window where it was like I could get like a whole heap done if I really focus, and trying to split my focus between my day job and that, and just juggling so many different things in life. I found that really tough. So taking that year definitely really helped. But then during that year, that was when I was like, I can't just mess around in, in this time. To be fair, I didn't even come up with the idea of my current website whilst I was during that year, just because I ended up becoming a busier and busier fool. So I was like, had a podcast, I was trying to do Pinterest, I was trying to do SEO, I was trying to do bits of YouTube, but not really anything properly. Email list, you name it. I was doing a Facebook group, absolutely
Oh
everything you
gosh.
can possibly think of. I was trying to do all of it completely by myself without outsourcing anything. And I was just like, I'm making the same amount of money pretty much as what I was before I even took this year off. I was like, what is the point? And so I just kind of stopped, and I was like, right, what broke everything down? I was like, what am I doing? What is working? What isn't working? What do I enjoy doing? And trying to like really assess, came up with this strategy. And then because I was going back to work, I was kind of like, well, I need to outsource this. We had a baby on the way. So a
Oh
lot of
gosh.
things were changing. And in fact, I've got way busier really since starting this website. But because I had the knowledge, the foundation, and I knew I wanted to outsource things and how to outsource things, that kind of completely changed things. Rather than me doing 100% of the work, it was like I'm more like a managerial position really now. I did a ton of it up front. It wasn't until it was making money before I even outsourced anything to anyone. But just that sole focus, I dropped everything else. I dropped absolutely everything else. I think I had one writer on Make Time Online who was still doing stuff. But apart from that, I was like 100% focused on building this one website and only focusing on SEO, no other social media, no other anything else, and just making sure I tried to give it as best chance as possible, to have a good first year.
Yeah. Mike, did you have like a mentor to kind of show you these things, or did you just kind of just figure it out on your own?
No, I did take another course though. I took the Authority Site System around
Hmm.
that time. So that was really helpful just to have like again, it's just step-by-step system. To be honest though, I've taken so many different types of courses and things now over the years, particularly with Make Time Online. I was quite often, looking at different people's courses and reviewing things and stuff like that. And what I would say that more, which is more important than anything else, rather than what course it is just pick one and stick with it and follow it
Yeah.
like to like 100%, because there are honestly so many ways to skin the cat. Like you could just go after content and ads, so like the John Dykstra sort of method of getting that low hanging fruit and just putting display ads on there and making, I don't know, he makes like $70,000-$100,000 a month
Yeah,
or
something ridiculous.
whatever. But then you've got Authority Site System, which is more like they focus more on like affiliate and
Hmm.
like roundup reviews and those sort of things. And again, that works. And then, you have other courses which kind of will show you like how to build a course or an email list in a course and things like that. And again, that can work, but it's trying to figure out like what suits you and what is going to be like who you resonate with as well. And I honestly don't think it really matters which one it is that you do. You've got Income School and there's tons of it. I could like list off loads of other people that have stuff, and obviously your course and community and things like that. It really doesn't matter who it is. Just find someone that you resonate with and stick with what their plan is, like 100% for as long as
Yeah.
possible. And then once you actually start finding some success, that's when you can like innovate a little bit and then find your voice and find like what it is that you're doing differently to everyone else in the niche and things like that. But there's no need to like completely try and do everything by yourself. But yeah, no, I didn't really have like a mentor or coach as such. It was just more support in different communities. And obviously I'd done the podcast and spoken to a ton of people that were doing crazy good things. So I'd reach out. I had a bit of a network where I could reach out to people if ever I got stuck with anything. But yeah, I didn't do anything special. That's for sure.
Yeah, man, I really do appreciate you saying that too, because it's like, sometimes because, we might be online and we're on YouTube and we listen to podcasts and everything, you might think that there's only a handful of people who are doing this SEO thing and doing the affiliate marketing thing. But like we were talking before we hit the record button, for every, one person, including me, online talking about this stuff, there's 100 to 200 SEOs who are, probably doing a million times better than, us combined, and it's just one of those things where, that focus is so necessary, and it's something that you don't want to branch out too much too fast. People think about, oh, I need to diversify this, I need to diversify that. No, you need to get a foothold in one place first, and then you can kind of branch out from there. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah, there's a guy in that community as well, Kevin Espiritu, who has like a garden.
Oh yeah, the garden site.
Yeah, and it's amazing what he's done. We're talking like he got funding for something like 17 million or something ridiculous. So it's just insane. It's like unthinkable numbers from when you first start. But he started the same way, like I think it was 2013, 2014 or something when he started.
Yeah.
Maybe even a bit later, and his goal was to make like $2,000 a month so he could quit his job or something. So, like it's insane. I think I saw him post something the other day actually saying something like he turned display ads off, which were making him something like $30,000 a month, just because they want to focus. They don't want to send people elsewhere now. So he's just turned off $30,000 a month because it's not good enough. So that just kind of gives you an idea of like the sort of numbers that he's doing. But I really like his advice on do one thing. So if it is SEO, once you start getting traffic from that, then if it is a podcast that you want to do, just look at what articles are getting traffic and then create a podcast and insert it there. And then that kind of leads those people that find you on Google onto your podcast. And then if you want to do YouTube, same thing, embed the video on those articles, mention your YouTube on your podcast, combine your podcast and your YouTube. And then once that's going, then if it's like Instagram, TikTok, then figure out how you make the shorts and those sort of things. And so rather than doing everything all at once, you can sort of scale it by using each platform to help each other, which is kind of the stage where I'm at now. I'm still really only focused on SEO and affiliate marketing. That's pretty much.
Yeah, and depending on how much money you're trying to make, that's really all you need.
Yeah,
exactly. For the most part.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Well, what I would say on that point is that I know it's really hard if you're listening to this and you're only just starting. It's really hard to hear people say these numbers and think that you're like worthy of these numbers and things like that. But it's weirdly just as hard to make like $500 a month than it is to make 5 figures a month. And it's like I'll say that, and some people will be like, "That makes no sense." And it doesn't make sense when you're first starting. But when I say it's just as hard, as in, like when I took that year off, I was working something like 70-hour work weeks at least. I was thinking about it all the time, like 100% of the time. I was thinking about it. Whereas now I have 2 small kids that are under 3, a full-time job, and that I'm running this business sort of on the side. And I put hardly anywhere near, like maybe 10 hours a week, if I'm lucky. Like is significantly less time for me. It's just that I know what I'm doing now. And so that's kind of the difference. Obviously there's tons of stuff I don't know. I'm fully aware of that. But it's crazy how it's not necessarily that much different or like that much harder to make a crazy amount of money. It's just the strategy and the implementation and how you actually go about it, which separates like websites that don't really do anything and websites that do really well.
Okay, no, that's very great advice. Very good advice for sure. All right, so let's jump into a little bit of your keyword research. So, what did you do to get that amount of traffic to your site? Well, about how much traffic is your site getting per month or so? Now, before we get back to the podcast, are you a website owner looking to make more money with your website? Well, look no further than Ezoic. Using machine learning, Ezoic creates personalized ad experiences for every visitor on your website, increasing the revenue while also balancing the user experience. I use Ezoic on my sites, and I think you should as well. And with Ezoic ads, publishers can connect with money-making popular ad networks and exchanges, completely streamlining the process for getting ads onto your site quickly and with little intervention on your part. Plus, with AI optimization and mediation, bloggers and publishers make more money and keep people on their sites longer, which is good for your website's SEO. So, unlock the true earning potential of your website by enrolling your site with Ezoic ads. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned publisher, start your free trial over at ezoic.com. That's EZOIC.com. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Right now, it's like I say, it's kind of been hit. So maybe 35,000 a month. But I think at its peak, it was pushing more like 100,000. So
Nice.
It's probably like consistently was getting somewhere around 70,000 before the December update. So it's around 50% of where it was. So it just, again, it shows you like it doesn't have to be crazy high numbers. I remember sharing some of this
Correct.
with someone before, and they were like, that means that you're like RPM, because they obviously were just making money from an ad network or something where if you get like $15, $20, that's amazing. It was like your RPM must be like $700 or something. I was like, yeah. And is that special or something? I wasn't even sure. He was like, that's insane. Like, you must just be making it up. And I was like, well, I'm not. But you can, I think I'd shared screenshots in this post and everything of like what I was saying, but it's just how you monetize it. It's like what keywords it is that you're doing. If it is something like your own course or even something like a lead gen, if you were, for example, if you're in pest control, I heard Shane Dykstra, I think his name is, on a podcast recently. And I've spoken to him a few times before. He was kind of saying how he was doing like a pest control niche and he was making a ton of money from like lead generation. So anyone that lands on the website, he just had like widgets and he'd send them off to this pest control company who every lead that he'd send, he'd make X amount of money or something. And it kind of ended up getting like a retainer for it. And you could charge like $10,000 a month, depending on how many leads that you're sending and how much they're worth. So it could only be like 100 people that he's sending, but if those 100 people, 10 of them buy $5,000 pest control things, then you've just made them like $50,000 from 100 people. And so it's kind of just changing your mindset a little bit, and rather than always thinking about more traffic means more money, it's like with the traffic that you have, how can you make more? But equally, if you haven't got much traffic, you kind of you do need to just focus on getting that traffic first, because it's hard to do anything when you haven't got any traffic or anything going. So yeah, it's kind of like chicken and egg thing.
Yeah, I always recommend to especially in my One Blog Away community, I tell people all the time, excuse me, this cough, that you should kind of like, when it comes to ads, that should be like a byproduct of going after, the more affiliate heavy type terms. Because I don't want to depend on display ads. I had a case study about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And the idea was just to go after display ads. I didn't do anything with affiliates or anything on it. And when the traffic didn't come to the site, very quickly, it was kind of just a waste of time. It felt like, versus a site that can get a third or a quarter of that amount of traffic, yet make 10 times as much because you're going after the right terms. So like in terms of your keyword research, like were you just going after all best of type stuff? Were you going after informational posts? What kind of a split did you have in order to make so much with so little ethically?
Yeah. Again, I think it's quite a common mistake that I see people make when they're early on, is just kind of worrying about like the percentage ratio of like info to commercial content and things like that. It roughly is about 50-50, I would say. And most of the commercial side of things are like roundup reviews or best of articles. But yeah, like from day one, I had a very clear idea of where I wanted to take the website. And so it never really became too much of an issue about making sure I had like really spot on keyword research and stuff like that done right at the start. I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to include. And it was kind of like, I'm probably going to write about these articles no matter how competitive they are. And then from there, have supporting content. So to try and explain that, let's just go with the pest control niche. Let's go with the garden niche, as we mentioned that already. Okay. So if you're going to do something like, I don't know, what's a really common gardening something that someone would buy?
I guess a rake, a pot, a pot.
Yeah, so a plant pot. So if you're going to say best plant pot of 2023 or whatever it is, that might be a super competitive, like, everyone targets that keyword because everyone thinks of it as the really obvious thing that everyone's going to do. But that's the one where you would like to get ranking on Google, but right at the start, you're probably not going to be able to. So underneath there, you'd have as many that you can think of as possible, like secondary ones. So it could even be, depending on how big the keyword is, it could be best small plant pots or best plant pots for small gardens, or best plant pots for commercial buildings, or best plant pots for massive gardens, or what, like there's tons of sort of sub keywords that can come off there, and like you can just extend the seed keyword, so the main target keyword that you're going for, and you can get tons of stuff off there. Or it might even just be slightly different things. I'm not sure like if there's a different name for a plant pot, like a small, like best small containers for your plants. I don't know, like if there might just be something like that where it's still very, very much related to it, and just trying to cover it in as much depth as possible. Because when you do that, then you're just sending a very strong signal to Google that this website clearly knows about plant pots. And then on your informational side of things is like how to care for your plants, and then that links to the plant pot, because you probably need to put your plant in here, and when to like reseed, or if you like your plant gets too big, how do I change it into another plant pot or something like that. And again, just trying to think of as many different keywords as possible to do with plant pot, and so you've covered that whole topic as thoroughly as possible. And if you have like 4 main hubs like that, then all of a sudden it just means that your website is very, very focused. It's very, very helpful for anyone that's finding anything about plant pot or spade or whatever it is that, the 4 main hubs that you're going for. And you've covered the topic thoroughly. So if they had any question, they'd be able to find it on your website. If they wanted to find a different type of product about anything related to it, they can find the exact best one for them depending on their needs and their situation. And so it, rather than just thinking of it like an algorithm all the time, it's just trying to actually think of what a user would actually want when they come to the website. And that makes it much easier to kind of like structure your website in a way which is actually helpful for someone that's kind of stumbled across it.
Yeah. So you're building your site for your audience, not just for a search engine, I guess you can say.
Exactly, yeah. And again, like if you go on like Ahrefs, or I'm not sure if you recommend any like keyword research tools, or I know Ahrefs has changed so much with the pricing; it's become a bit crazy.
Yeah, it's I mean, I still use Ahrefs. I don't necessarily recommend it to someone who's brand new.
Yeah,
I normally just send them to like a keyword chef, a low fruits, something like that, just to find out some low competition stuff. But then kind of similar to you, going after kind of that pie in the sky article that you might not ever rank for.
yeah,
But then if you can send traffic to it from the other articles that you write and you interlink to it well, then it'll end up getting propped up. And that kind of sounds like what you were doing with like a nice little content hub or silo, a category, whatever you want to call it. And then just being able to cover that topic so well just by answering this question, answering that question, and then doing smaller best ofs that links to the bigger best of.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent strategy, and yeah, definitely it's worked for you so far.
I mean,
so that's amazing.
We still only really have like 5 content hubs like that. Kind of all based off that main seed keyword, and every article has kind of come underneath one of them so far. And so it's like they're always propping that one up, because people often talk about things like backlinks and things like that. Whereas I think any link from Google is at least a sign that an article is good. And so even if you just keep on sending more and more internal links from relevant articles yourself, it's just you just keep sending that signal to Google, like this article, like this is the article. Look at this article. That's all you're doing. You're just feeding it like this article is really good. See, we link to it again, and see someone else link to it again if you're getting backlinks and things like that. So I think that's really important. But also when you end up using any tool, it doesn't matter which one it is, if it's Ahrefs or a cheaper version, what I always end up finds happening is you end up going down a rabbit hole which starts leading you astray from what your original plan was. Just for example, so if we were talking about plant pots and things like that, you end up like reverse engineering another website. So you find another website that's quite small, similar size to yours, and you end up seeing that they're ranking for stuff. And so you find out what they are ranking for and what pages they've written. And then you end up finding something like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Alan Titchmarsh, but he's like a famous gardener in the UK. And you end up finding things like, how much does Alan Titchmarsh earn?
Oh yeah.
And it's like, just because he's a gardener, that has nothing to do with what your site's about. But people end up going down it, and then you end up going down further and further, and then your website starts ranking for how much does so and so earn, and so they start writing about how much does Shaquille O'Neal earn, and all kinds of stuff. It's like that's not even nearly relevant, and it just that small one change all of a sudden starts confusing Google, but also confuses your audience, just confuses everyone. And so it's definitely always a good idea to just try and keep your own brain thinking about where you want the website to go, rather than just trying to find as many low-hanging fruit keywords as possible using a tool.
Yeah, and that's exactly, a point that I've gone through myself. But there's other, trainings out there that pretty popular one that just say go straight for low competition keywords and that's it, right? All these zero volume net. And what they're finding is that a lot of people will do that. They'll write 200 articles and then they only got 10,000 page views to their site per month, and they're wondering why. Yeah. And it's because they never reached outside of those low competition words and actually went for something. Because I mean, how many times have you written something that you probably have no business ranking for, and you end up ranking for it just because you took the shot, right? And I think that's a kind of a fallacy for just going after low competition stuff.
Yeah, no, I've got to say as well, like some of those articles that, some of the first 10 articles that I wrote, I think there was maybe like 7 best of articles and 3 like ultimate guides. And the ultimate guides were just there purely as like informational, helpful things that I never intended to rank for. And I think all 3 of those articles, which were just massive long shots, like super competitive, all 3 of them rank now, and did quite quickly as well, like much quicker than what I thought. Even when I had built hardly any backlinks, there was no real authority on the website. I just found that fascinating how, they were really well thought out, or I thought they were really well thought out articles. And like, I didn't do anything like I wasn't using things like Surfer SEO. It's not like I was trying to keyword stuff and put all of that sort of stuff in. I just thought about the article. I looked at the competition, saw what else was out there, kind of thought, what would I want to see as a user? And again, like that's something that's quite important about this space is I actually am a customer in this space. So I have read other articles in this space before and come away feeling like, no, it's not what I really wanted to get from it. And so I already knew what I wanted to get from it. And I just made sure I do that on like all of the articles. And so that's quite important as well, is just having a bit of an interest. Even if you're not passionate about it, at least be interested enough to just go like a level deeper than what the average writer would. I think that's so important.
Or even nowadays with the average AI tool will create, right?
Well, exactly. I actually, in some ways, feel like it's definitely not easier. That's not the right word. It's going to become super competitive, but it is almost easier to stand out, just put your own opinion in there, and all of a sudden your article will be different to anyone else's because they're just using AI random facts and things like that. And just make sure that you make it clear that you're a human being. Like, mention your dog and your kids and your wife and whatever it is, just anything just to show that you're a real human being. Add some jokes in there. You don't need to be funny. I would never class myself as like a funny person, but the more you do this sort of stuff, the more you figure out, that would be quite funny. And whenever you finish an article, I always just think, have I made myself laugh at some stage? Even if it doesn't make anyone else laugh, is there a point where I'm like, that bit, I found that quite funny. So I always and the more that you do that, the more you naturally just slot it in rather than having to go back and edit and kind of force a joke in somewhere that doesn't really make sense. So yeah.
Well, I know we're getting close to the end, but that's some great information there because we got to find some ways to separate ourselves. But one last question. I know you mentioned earlier how you were building links, and I know I need to ask that question. So how are you building links? Are you building links on your niche site? How is that going?
Yeah, I think, and again, this is probably where a bit of luck comes in. I think at the start I was using Helper Reporter out, Harrow, quite a lot. And so that was... I got some really good links really early on to the website. And so that almost just gave it that little bit of boost and authority quite quickly to help it kind of get out of the sandbox. And, it was maybe like month 6 or 7 where it was starting to make its first trickle of money, and it just kind of was snowballing at that stage. So that was really good. I think Matt Diggity has a really good, it's a 3-minute video on the types of links that you need, where he talks about power, which I believe comes from I think it's power, relevance, and I can't remember the other one, maybe authority or something. But authority is what I just spoke about there. So I use Helper Reporter for the authority, your big DR90 sites that can, move the needle for you. I think they're quite important early on, just because if you're getting links from very high authority websites, that's a clear sign to Google that you're someone to be looked at. You're not just a crappy affiliate site. Then the relevancy is kind of simple enough. You need links from people in the same sort of niche as you. So that's where guest posts will come in useful. So if you can write some guest posts on websites in a similar space to you, that's really, really helpful, because you're just showing, a website that's similar to yours on an article that's similar to the sort of articles you have, linking back to an article that's similar to that article. It just shows a really good connection between all of that. And then the power, I think, is more as in trying to get link insertions. So if you're doing outreach for guest posts, it's kind of a natural byproduct, is that some people won't want a guest post, but they might take a link insertion. And that kind of, again, you can try and find articles which are already getting quite a lot of, they've either got a lot of backlinks themselves, or they've got a lot of power or traffic or something like that going to them. And if you insert a link onto an article that's already getting a ton of traffic, that gives your website that more power, or the article you're linking back to more power. So if you kind of just try and focus on those 3 types of things, again, it's the 80-20, there's tons of other stuff you can do, like broken backlink building and all these kind of
Yeah.
things. If you're already doing it and getting some success, then just double down on whatever it is that's working. But I mean, all we've ever really done is Harrow and outreach, and that's kind of it. And then just
You do Skyscraper? Like Skyscraper?
Yeah, not really. Yeah, that doesn't really work so well anymore. It's more just, if no one really cares, like if you've written a better article
It's
than something that they're
Skyscraper.
right about. So it's like they're not gonna. I think the theory behind the Skyscraper outreach was that you would make an article that's way better than something that's already ranking. Find out who's linking back to them and say, "Hey, I've made a better article. Link to mine now." And they're like, "Hey, give me some money." And then you're like, "Oh, well, that sucks." And that's something as well. We've never bought a backlink just because more than anything else, like I would pay for a backlink if someone asked me for money and it was a very, very good website, but it just knocks out 99.9% of like link farms, basically, if you don't pay for if someone's going to link back to you without you paying, like giving them, physically sending them money, there's a very good chance that they make money in other ways, like from affiliate or ad revenue or their own course or something like that. Whereas anyone that says they're only going to give you a link if you pay them, then that increases the chances, in my eyes, of them becoming like a link farm, and they're just going to end up linking to CBD sites, casino sites, all the sites that you don't really want to be involved with. And they basically end. The only way they make money is by
selling more links.
Pay them for a link, so they just become like an old school PBN, basically. So yeah, we just try and avoid those. But yeah, the outreach is much more, again, just trying to make it seem like you're a real person, like just reaching out to them, try and find something that they might find valuable. So if you do have social media of some sort, something that can work quite well is saying, I'll create like 5 pins for you for this article. I see that this would be really good on Pinterest, and we already get this many people that see us on Pinterest. I found that's worked a little bit in the past. What you can also do as well is offer them a link in return, but not from like directly from your website. So just for example, say I've got a guest post on this garden website over here, and I'd like a guest post on this old pensioners website over here or whatever, then it's like, on this guest post I could link to you from here if I'm allowed to write a guest post for you, and then again on there you could maybe link to someone else. It's a little bit grey hat, I would say. It's not like it's completely white hat, but at the end of the day, people want something, so you kind of have to figure out what is it that they want. Some people are not interested in a link, but maybe you've got an email list of like 1,000 people and in the same sort of space, and say, I will recommend, like if they've got a course or a product, I'm happy to send an email out recommending your product if we can write a guest post on your article, or if you can insert a link to us, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's just trying to figure out what you can give other people. And again, just try and make it seem like you're a real person rather than an AI robot.
Yeah, there's a guy on YouTube who's an SEO, and one thing he always mentions when it comes to links is that they're like the currency of the internet, right? So I thought that was genius because it makes a lot of sense, because like you said, you're trying to just come up with something where it's not just a take, right? It's a give and take. And if you can come up with something, you will have to be creative. There's not necessarily a B, C, D, follow this and you're going to get a link. Yeah. If you try to create relationships with people, and one thing that I've definitely realized is that when you do reach out to people manually, and then, like you said, come across as a human being, not just a copy and pasted template email or whatever, usually those links are going to be the better links, right? Those are the ones that, okay, this is another person in my space that I can network with, and you'll be able to get a free link, a lot of the times from there. And I think it's amazing that you said you haven't, purchased a link at all. I think the authority site, or the authority hacker guys mentioned, they took a poll and he said like 70 or 80% of SEOs buy links. Yeah. So the fact that you've gotten around that completely, you don't have to worry about things like you mentioned, link farms and something like that. That's awesome.
More than anything else is it just gives us that peace of mind that if they are going to do it for free, there's a good chance that they are making money in another way more than anything else. Like I say, if the like I know really good websites out there, and if I could pay them like $50, $100, whatever, to get a link on their website, I 100% would. It's just that they don't normally. They're the sort of website that just won't respond.
Yeah.
It's trying to find an individual that maybe works for that website. That's your best way to get in on like those bigger websites and things. It's not just a general outreach message is normally not going to cut it. There's something I have seen starting to float around a little bit, and I bet this becomes like the popular tactic going forward. Is I've seen people that get access to like DR 80, 90 or 70 plus sites basically, but they're kind of a crappy site. They probably are link farms from what I've seen. And what they do is that they lead the outreach saying, would you like a link? Even the subject line is, would you like a link from a DR 70 plus website or something like that? I don't know if you've ever received an email like this, but I've seen it a few times.
I don't think so. Not yet, at least.
Yeah, I bet you start seeing it. And I've noticed some agencies are starting to do it. So what they're doing is obviously they've got access to this website and they're offering it. That's the link bait. And so someone sees that, they run it through Ahrefs, they've got traffic, they've got high DR, but it's just crappy content and probably will crash at some stage. But then that's how they're getting the guest post, because then they send a link from there. And that's how they get their foot in the door basically. So, but like I say, the way around that is, if you are doing guest posts, you can offer other guest posts potentially, or even just, it might even be like a network of people that you end up getting to know, where if they're in a similar sort of space trying to do a similar thing, it's just like, just say every now and then, is it right if I get someone, if you link to someone, and then I'll make sure that I find you a link somewhere else and things like that. I think the guy that you would say, was that Adam Emfroy?
Yes, it was. Emfroy. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that he says as well, I think because his growth was insane at the start, but he found people basically doing the same thing. So they were reaching out as well. And any guest post he would write, he would link back to his own website and his friend's website, who was doing the outreach as well. And anytime they did a guest post, they would link back to his website and their website. So it's like doubling your efforts. And if you get 3 or 4 of you doing that, it means every guest post that you do, you're potentially getting like 4 links from different sources in it. And so that's how it can like snowball a little bit.
Yeah. If you can network with people or have multiple sites, then that does give you the option of being able to do those 3-way exchanges without doing a direct exchange.
Yeah.
That is helpful. But no, that definitely was Adam on that one. He's like a backlinking like god over there, man. He just he's a machine.
Again, though, I just think people are kind of like cottoning on to that kind of outreach that he sort of does, which is very similar to what I was just suggesting there, to be fair. But yeah, no, I think the other really successful way that I've been able to get links and guest posts and things like that here and there is just kind of like what you say, is reaching out to people like on social media rather than getting off a little bit, and particularly like your own existing network. If there's someone that you already know, it's just like, hey, have you got a website in this kind of space? That, because quite often people will have like 5 or 6 websites for something, and they're happy to accept a guest post on some of them, or do a link. And particularly if you already have a bit of a relationship with them, then it can make it much easier. But yeah, obviously that's easier said than done, because when you first start and you probably don't know hardly anyone, but you just be amazed that when you're just doing this sort of stuff and you're in the Facebook groups, you'll just start, whenever you see someone that posts something that kind of resonates with you, just hop onto Messenger and just say, hey, I saw this, and just speak to them. You don't have to ask for anything straight away. But 6 months down the line, you might have figured out that person has a couple of websites that are decent, and that might come back. You might be able to help them. They might be able to help you. And it's always thinking about how can you help other people all the time. So if you lead with value, so Another thing that I have done as well is send people links from my guest posts and then say, hey, I've just sent you
Mm-hmm.
like links from these 5 different websites. Hope that helps. And that's it. Like, just leave it as that. And they're all, every time they're always like, that's amazing. Is there anything I can do for you? Like, how could I help? And maybe it's a bit deliberate, but it's not solely deliberate. Like, quite a lot of the time they are people that I quite like anyway. And I just want to see if I can help that, and I say, is there any have you got any articles that you're particularly trying to push? I'm happy to make sure I can try and fit them in naturally whenever they come up. So just trying to do those things as much as possible. I mean, if you're already getting guest posts, then it's not really too much extra work. You just, rather than only putting a link back to your own website, you just see, can I link to my friend's website as well? Just start making friends, basically.
Yeah, that's what it is. Get from behind the computer. So you think I have to actually go out and make friends with people? Crazy. No, I found a little bit of success with that as well. Like, one thing I've been doing recently is if I find a site that I would like to get a link from, I'll either maybe send them like a screenshot of a link that I was responsible for and that's pointing to them. It's like, hey, here's a screenshot of it right here. Here's your link right here, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. And like you said, they'll respond, but man, appreciate it. Thank you so much. What can I do for you? And you're like, hi, got you. That's the part right there. So
you see it.
Yeah, I think I found, because someone did that to me. They sent me a screenshot of my link on the site, and that saved me the time of having to go dig it up in Ahrefs, right? And I was like, okay, well, it's helpful, so let me go ahead and go for it. Another thing that I've been doing too is if you look in, if you're in Ahrefs, you look at the outbound links report, and if you're trying to vet a site, if you see that the outbound links for that site is just going to a whole bunch of really crappy sites and here, that, and the other, it makes it a lot easier than trying to guess if whether or not that site is legit, and that you actually want a link from them. But I think with the new plan, I think you need the $199 one in order to see that report on Ahrefs, which is kind of nuts. But
I think we have like maybe 8 or 9 different quality metrics that we go through. So we still just do the outreach as normal. And then it's only when you get in the negotiation phase, if it's like, right, we might be able to get a link from them, then we put it through like our quality checker. And so it has things like domain rating, traffic. I think we have like how English speaking website, whether there's been a drop of traffic, how many categories they've got, because typically link farms have like 50
everything.
Whereas if it's only on gardening, then that's like 1 to 4 categories or something. Just those kind of things, and we just run it through. And again, like outbound links, are there any going to like CBD, casino? I think they're some of the main ones. There's some others, but
adult ones, yeah.
And then so we just run all that, churns out a formula, and it's like if it gets over 70%, it's a pass. If it's not, then it's a fail, sort of thing. And it just makes it a bit more objective rather than trying to have to guess. And it also means as well, though, that we'll take guest posts and links on DR5 sites, whereas we'll reject DR80 sites. And it's like, it's really changed the way that myself and the guys that are helping to do this, it's changed the way that we think of where we're getting links from, because it's not just about DR, which is what most people will look at, is just how much authority does a tool say that they have, which is only a tiny fraction of it.
Yeah, I tell people like a DR or a DA or whatever, it's kind of like the temperature, right? Why do stateside people use Fahrenheit and everywhere else they use Celsius? I mean, they're just measurements, right? That doesn't mean very much of anything. It can be 70 degrees Fahrenheit outside, but it might feel like 50, right? So you have to dig a little deeper, go outside and actually feel what it feels like to know how to dress that day. And it's kind of the same thing with this DR and DA. This can give you a little bit of a snapshot of what the service says that it is, but until you dive deeper into it and look to see how it's getting that number, you'll never know. If you just look at that surface level, you're going to end up going outside and freezing to death. So you have to look at it subjectively that way. And if you want it to work right. But look, man, I know we've gone a little bit over, so I do apologize for that. But man, it was a great conversation. Where can people keep up with you?
Make Time Online is still going, but probably Facebook is the best place to reach out to me, just because I'm in a few groups and things. I try, like I say, I've tried to avoid all social media. Like, I don't have Instagram and TikTok or anything like that on my phone anymore. It's just, everything's just gone unless it's for productivity basis. But I am looking to expand a bit more on socials and stuff over the next year or so.
With the personal brand or the niche brand?
The niche,
the niche site. Gotcha.
Yeah,
makes sense, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of niche / personal, I guess. Well, it's not really personal at all at the minute, but I'm thinking of getting a bit more into YouTube. And I mean, I just think it's too hard to outsource YouTube. Like, at the start,
it is.
I think that you just, the energy and the time that you put into it is very hard to get someone else or expect anyone else to do the same. But I think eventually you could probably do it. Like, if you
it's got to be slow.
Proceed. Yeah. If you have like a structure and stuff like that, you could eventually, I don't know,
like,
maybe.
Like, you brought up niche pursuits, right? And you would think a podcast is one of the hardest things to outsource, right?
Yeah.
But, after a while, what you do is, Spencer was doing it forever. And then he had Jared on as a guest. And then he had Jared on as a guest again a few months later. And all of a sudden he was doing it together with Jared for a few episodes. And then eventually he just gave it to Jared. And then at the end of the day, Jared is a much better interviewer than Spencer is,
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that I am in no way delusional enough to think I am going to be the best person on YouTube. I know I'm not. I know I won't be, but it's like I am going to be. I'll just put in the time and the effort that is needed to get it up and running. Because that's something as well that I didn't share, is that in June, as in like next month, I'll be going back to the UK and just going full time with this. So it's like I will now be in a position where I have more time to do that creative side of things and those other things where it's not as easy to do when you're in a full-time job and got kids and other stuff.
No, man, I remember those days. I'm still there, to be honest, because Benji's only 6 right now. But when he was really young, it was very easy to kind of do stuff around him because he couldn't do anything, right? Yeah. But as soon as he comes home from school now, it's like immediately I almost got to drop what I'm doing because he wants to do stuff. It's tough because I'm like, I'm in the middle of something, but you don't want to. I don't want to miss out on these years, which is the whole point of why I started this whole thing to begin with. So
I was literally just planning out my day. I was like, when I go back to England, because I know it's going to be so easy to just fall into any old habit and any old routine. I was like, I want to actually go with it as a bit of a plan. But thinking is, I want to try and get up as early as I can and get like 4 or 5 hours of like solid work before other people are waking up, and before that hectic school run time and stuff like that. So maybe 4 hours, like try and get some good work in there, then can help do the school run and then come back, maybe do a workout, then maybe like do a few more hours of work, and then try and time it around when the kids are going to be around and things like that. And so, because exactly like you say, I know for a fact when Lila comes back, well, she'll be at nursery next year, but when she comes back, there's no way I'm going to be able to just be like, nope, I'm just in the middle of doing something now.
Exactly. Yeah. I found success with batching a lot of stuff, Mike. So like, for example, you are actually my 3rd interview today.
No,
but by doing that, I'm going to be able to schedule stuff out and I won't have to worry about the podcast for like, hopefully a month or 2, and if I can get it done as far in advance as possible, then that makes the process a lot easier. So, it's not, it takes planning, and before you can do it a little willy nilly and just, okay, I'll get to it when I can, or I just wake up a little later or wake up a little earlier, go to bed a little later, whatever. But like you mentioned, man, once kids gets involved, it does make it a lot difficult. And I always tell myself, like, he's not going to want to play with me when he's 15. He's gonna want to hang out with his friends. Exactly. So I need to take advantage of it now.
Got to cherish it. You got to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, man, thanks so much for being on. This was amazing, and I do appreciate your time.
Cheers, Chris.